If you want to play a song, get a music score, period. But if you want to figure out how a song sparks emotion, well, you need something different. 15 tips of theory, 3 tools, 1 checklist to define a method for breaking down a song. But after dozens of books and hundreds of videos, it's easy to realize that it's difficult to gauge music with rules. We also need 3 key principles that are always true and that we must always keep in mind. After that, we can delve into the songs of these amazing artists to discover some miraculous ingredient or hidden recipe, because they know something we don't. Be sure of that. First of all, the context in which we will make the analysis of a song is the tonal harmony, which is based on the tonal center, from which a scale is developed, and from which we proceed to harmonization through triads. In this context, music harmony theory is based on the fact that the chords have a rule, a function. We have just 3 functions. Tonic function, chords that serve as the home base or point of rest, of release, and stabilize the tonality. Predominant function, chords that start the movement and act as a bridge between tonic and dominant. Dominant function, chords that create tension that needs to be resolved back to the tonic, to home. Now, which are the functions of the tonic chords, the chords built on a scale? The first chord, C major in our example, is the most stable chord. The first has a tonic function. The 5th chord, G, has a dominant function. This chord has the 7th note, B, that naturally tends to the root note, C. And it has just 1 note in common with the first, which is the G note. The 7th diminished, B diminished, has a dominant function too. This chord has the 7th note B that naturally tends to the root note C. And it has no notes in common with the first, so this chord creates more tension than the 5th. There is also the 3rd minor chord that has the 7th note B, but it has also 2 notes in common with the first chord, E and G. So the 3rd minor has both dominant and tonic function. It depends on the context. F, the 4th, has a predominant function. It has just 1 note in common with the first, which is the root note C. D minor, the 2nd, has 2 notes in common with the 4th, F and E, and it has a predominant function. The last chord, A minor, the 6th, has 2 notes in common with F, A and C, and 2 notes in common with the first, C and E. So the 6th has both predominant and tonic function. It depends on the context. And what about the functions of the non-diatonic chords, the chords that don't belong to the scale? In general, all non-diatonic chords tend to create tension and therefore have a dominant function, but not always. Secondary dominant, a chord that functions as the dominant, the 5th, of a chord other than the tonic in a given key. It has a dominant function, it creates tensions. Borrowed chords. These are chords taken from a parallel key. In general, they inherit the function of the chord in the parallel key. For instance, if we are in C major key and we want to borrow F minor from the parallel C minor key, F minor is the 6th in the C minor key, so F minor has a predominant function. For chromatic chords, if a chord has 2 notes in common with a diatonic chord, it tends to function like the diatonic chord. If a chord has 1 note in common with a diatonic chord, it tends to introduce some tension, while a chord that has no notes of the scale has a dominant function. Let's now introduce the first key concept. Music is movement, and this movement is generated by a sequence of tension and release. Tension and release can be effectively managed not only through harmony and melody, but also by employing rhythm, dynamics, and the unique timbres of the instrument. In this context, the best progression of function is tonic, that stabilizes the scale and gives a sense of release. Predominant, that starts the movement from release versus tension. dominant, that has a great sense of tension and needs to return as soon as possible to tonic. Of course, the progression of functions is certainly not the only option available. But you can be confident that if you follow this rule, the resulting chord progression will work exceptionally well. Until now we have seen single chords and their function. But what about a sequence of chords? An harmonic phrase refers to a segment of music that is defined by a specific harmonic progression or sequence of chords. An harmonic phrase is closed by a couple of chords called cadences. And the type of cadence suggests a sense of continuation, a temporary response, or finality to the phrase. If the sentence is closed by an half cadence, first versus fifth, second or sixth, or fourth versus five, first versus a predominant chord, first versus a dominant chord, the phrase suggests continuation. If the sentence is closed by a deceptive cadence, fifth versus fourth, or fifth to any function but one, the phrase suggests temporary response. If the sentence is closed by an authentic cadence, fifth versus first, or by a chord versus first, or by a plagal cadence, fourth versus first, the phrase suggests finality. Chords create a sentence, and sentences create periods. A period is created by at least two sentences. If phrase 1 is closed by an half cadence and phrase 2 is closed by an authentic cadence, phrase 1 is the antecedent and phrase 2 is the consequent. More than two phrases create a phrase group. If phrase 1 and 2 are closed by an half cadence, they are antecedents. If phrase 3 is closed by an authentic cadence, this is consequent. As we have seen, everything is based on a tonal center. Modulation is the process of changing from one key or tonal center to another within a piece of music. This change can occur abruptly, direct modulation, or smoothly with a pivot chord, using augmented chords, diminished chords, secondary dominants, tritones, or using parallel keys or modes. This is a fundamental technique used to create variety, contrast, and emotional depth in music composition. The first concept in melody theory is motion. Conjunct motion or stepwise motion is the most natural type of melodic motion, occurring in the intervals of seconds, either ascending or descending. Disjunct motion or skipwise motion is a type of melodic motion characterized by intervals of third or larger, either ascending or descending. The relationship between harmony and melody is quite complex. In the last part of this video, we will present a tool that shows a method for analyzing this relationship in terms of tension and release. However, the easiest way to create a melody is by using the notes of the chord. But this approach has two problems. The motion is a skipwise motion, which is less natural than the stepwise motion, and it can be rather boring. That's why it's important to have rules to connect the dots, which mean connecting the chord's tone in order to create an efficient and beautiful melody. Let's see 6 ways to do it. A passing tone is a type of non-chord tone. It is used to pass between chord tones. 3 criteria must be met. Must be between 2 chord tones, must move in stepwise motion, must move in a continuous direction away from and to the next chord tone. It can be diatonic or chromatic. A neighbor tone is a type of non-chord tone. It is used to move away from and return to the chord tone. 3 criteria must be met. Must be between 2 chord tones, must move in stepwise motion, must move in a discontinuous motion away from and immediately return to the same chord tone. An escape tone is a note that leaves a chord tone by stepwise motion and return to a different chord tone by skipwise motion in the opposite direction. An appoggiatura is a note that leaves a chord tone by skipwise motion and return to a different chord tone by stepwise motion in the opposite direction. An anticipation tone is a note which is played early in anticipation of the change in the chord. It is a non-chord tone and it relates to the chord preceding it. A suspension tone is a note that is held over through the next chord change. It is a non-chord tone as it relates to the chord preceding it. Non-chord tones that connect the chord tones create a motif. A motif is defined as a short musical idea or recurring figure that holds significant importance within a composition. Let's now talk about the key concept number 2. The balance between variety and uniformity is essential in creating effective music. Too much variety can lead to a lack of coherence, making it difficult for a listener to follow, while excessive uniformity can result in monotony, causing the listener to lose interest. So, as mentioned, the motif is an essential part of a musical piece. Its repetition helps create coherence through the song, but if it remains uniform and always the same, it can become quite boring. This is why it's important to develop variation on it. By transposition, that can be diatonic or chromatic, by sequences, diatonic or chromatic, by interval expansions, by expansion of an interval, by intervallic compression, by compression of an interval, by octave transfer, that can be complete or partial, or by inversion of the melody, that can be also transposed or mirrored, by retrograde motion, that can be also inverted, and finally by augmentation of the duration of the notes or by the diminution of them, by truncation of a part of the motif or by expansion of a part of it, by displacement. In a melody, there are notes that are structural, serving as the skeleton for the other notes or the motif. Generally, the structural notes are chord tones that are connected by non-chord tones as we have seen, but not always. All the structural tones form the outline of the melody, which summarizes the complete melody. In order to write a melody, one possible approach is to write the chord progression and then define the structural tones you want to use, following these rules. Use the first note of the chord as a structural tone if you want to emphasize stability. Use the third note if you want to emphasize the quality of the chord you are using, major or minor. Use the fifth note if you want to give a movement to the melody. Use the seventh note if you want to create instability in the melody. The last important aspect in the melody theory is the concept of stability and instability of the tones. The tonal center serves as the center point of the scale, establishing the relationship of both stability and instability with the notes that belong to the scale. The first, the third, and the fifth are stable. The others are unstable. But it is better to speak of degrees of stability and instability, as indicated by the arrow. Now let's explore 3 tools that can help in music analysis. The first one, of course, is the circle of fifths. So simple, so beautiful, so powerful. I have done a series of 8 videos about it. You can find the link in the description. If you manage it, you can easily get quality of the chords, key signature, major and minor keys, chords degrees, chords function, transposition, secondary dominant, progression 2-5-1, secondary diminished, modal scales, how to modulate, scale notes, intervals, triads, sevenths, and probably much more. The second tool I want to propose is actually just a table. It's good for summarizing the movement of the melody, the movement of the harmony, and their relationship. Let's take an 8 measure period. And let's summarize the harmony. First, using chords, then grades, then functions, then stable and unstable measure. And at the end, everything can be summarized with emotion. Let's do the same with the outline melody. And let's put the structural tones in the same table format, putting the note grade, identifying the stable and unstable note. And at the end, everything can be summarized with emotion. What we get is a table like this that summarizes the emotion of harmony and melody. And it's extremely simple to understand when the movement of harmony and melody goes together or not. Remember the first key concept: Music is movement generated by tension and release. The last tool I want to propose is the dynamic map, also known as intensity flow. It summarizes the dynamic intensity of the entire song. On the x-axis we have the structure of the song with measure of each section. In this example we have an intro, 4 measures, verse 1, 8 measures, and so on. On the y-axis we have the intensity of the song. Intensity levels. These represent the variety degrees of loudness and softness in the music. Builds. Section where the intensity gradually increases, often through variation in harmony or introduction of new instruments. Hooks. Memorable parts of the song that stand out and are easily recalled by listeners. Transitions. Moments where there is a noticeable shift in intensity, contributing to the overall flow of the piece. Now let's see a simple checklist in order to break down a song methodically. General info. BPM, time, main key, groove, style. Dance section and their correlation, the period. Especially identifying verse, chorus and bridge. Movement in the harmonic phrases. Movement in the melodic phrases. The motif, main and secondary motif. Movement in the rhythmic phrases. Relationship among melody, harmony and rhythm. And the energy map. So we have seen 15 tips of theory, 3 tools, 1 checklist, 3 key principles. Yeah, actually we have seen just 2 key principles. The third is the most important. If you are a new Bob Dylan or a new Paul McCartney, you can forget everything we have discussed so far. This is just all you need. Anyway, if you are not, always keep this concept firmly in mind. Trust your ear. So that's it. Thank you very much for watching and stay in touch with us.